Let's bring in our special Ukraine correspondent, Nimisha Jaiswal, who is in the Poltava region. Nimisha, tell us more about the attack on Sumy.
Well, Michael, we know that 2 ballistic missiles hit a busy city center as people were heading to church. Many civilians on the road, a trolley bus was hit, a car caught fire, and several residential and non-residential buildings were hit as well. We now know that at least 31 people have been killed, including 2 children, over 80 people injured, including 7 children. So clearly horrifying numbers coming through, as well as horrifying images are now all over social media ever since the strike at about 10 a.m. local time. We have pictures and videos of bodies strewn on the streets of a young mother with her young child, both of them covered in blood. So clearly a horrific day for Sumy. There were more ballistic missiles headed that way, reported later in the afternoon as well, but no further casualties so far from those.
What's the reaction to this attack at the moment?
Well, Michael, like you said, Zelensky has put out a statement. He put out another one with an updated death toll, and he has insisted that Russia must be treated as a terrorist state, that the pressure must be kept up, that Russia is dragging its feet. And he said that there was no backing off from Russia, that this was a reiteration of the fact that they've entered a second month without since Ukraine agreed to a full ceasefire, and Russia clearly does not see any incentive to stop killing, is what Zelensky said. We also had the defense minister saying Ukraine needs more air defenses and that it definitely needs security guarantees. But the other common theme that you can see across social media here is actually quite a bit of anger directed towards the US. Earlier this week, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff was in Moscow meeting with Russian President Putin, and there were many comments out there that is this the negotiation that the US is carrying out, that please let Marco Rubio know, when he spoke out in support of Witkoff on Twitter, that this is what the result of their actions is. So clearly a lot of anger here and a lot of grief as well.
Nimisha Jaiswal, many, many thanks.
All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. I like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are learned this truth from, and I like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, April 14th, 2025, Missile Monday, and I have this article from DW.com, and it was published earlier, and it says Germany's MERS says Sumy attack war crime by Russia. So just to give a slight background before I read the article, there was an attack in Ukraine, Sumy, Ukraine, and as of now, 30 people were killed, because they sent, ballistic missiles over there, resulting in those individuals' deaths, So I'm just going to go into this article, bring out a few scriptures, Lord willing. This lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And it says, Germany's likely next chancellor, Friedrich Merz, strongly condemned a Russian attack in northeastern Ukraine that killed more than 30 people. He also remains open to providing Ukraine with Taurus missiles. So it says Germany's likely next chancellor Friedrich Merz has accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of committing a war crime after a Russian missile attack killed at least 34 people, including children, in the Ukrainian city of Sumy. Now, understand that again, man, ultimately it's judgment, but and when there's war, man, it doesn't matter, man. These nukes, well, those weren't nukes. They were just, ballistic missiles. But still, man, these missiles, they don't have eyes, man. Whoever the Lord wants those missiles to hit, they're going to hit. It's not again, it's tragic. But at the same time, man, again, you have to remember that Ukraine or Russia are still at war. You know, you're going to have casualties of war. You know, it happens. So you're going to have women and children and the elderly that are going to get put to death in the midst of war. Slakia. So continuing, it says, the leader of the center-right Christian Democratic Union, or CDU, told German public broadcaster ARD on Sunday that the deadly Russian Slakia, this shit just jumped. Okay, so it says, the leader of the center-right Christian Democratic Union, or CDU, told German public broadcaster ARD on Sunday that the deadly Russian missile assault was a deliberate and calculated war crime. There are 2 waves of attacks, and the second arrived as emergency workers were taking care of the victims, said Mers. That is the response. That is what Russian President Vladimir Putin does to those who walk with him. It's like who talk with him of a ceasefire. He added, mentioning those in Germany who naively call for peace talks with Putin. Our willingness to discuss with him is interpreted not as a serious offer to make peace, but as weakness, said Mers. You know, and pretty much, you know, it's just him going into, again, the whole attack happening. I'm going to actually leave this in the description box, you know, once this video is uploaded. But again, man, you know, we're in a time of war. You know, again, it happens. People are going to die, man. You're going to have casualties of war. Slakia. And, you know, again, they're saying he committed war crimes when the United States, you know, has committed plenty of war crimes, man, and still probably is, you know, most likely. But at the same time, man, again, there's not going to be a ceasefire, you know. Things are going to heat up just like the ceasefire that was supposed to take place between, you know, Ishmael and Amalek over there in the land. Yeah, they may have stopped for a minute, but what now? They're right back at it, man. Back to the regularly scheduled program, man. You know, they're back to bombing each other back and forth. And there's another article I seen earlier, you know, where, you know, Amalek, you know, they bombed a hospital in Gaza, you know. So again, man, this is the time that we're in. We're in a time of war. Please don't be mistaken, you know, and don't be misled by, you know, these certain Israelite leaders that'll have you thinking that, you know, nothing is going to happen. And that could be far from the truth, man. Because as we see prophecies, you know, these prophecies are jumping off the page, man. You know, every day there's something happening, man. 2025 started with a bang, man. You know, and we're halfway through April, you know. And again, man, things are just gradually getting worse, you know. So I'm not going to make this one too long. You know, I'm just going to grab a couple, and that'll be it. So I'm going to start with the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, and verse 5. And it says, for every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. And right, man, this coming Third World War is not going to be a traditional war, you know, where you'll have men on one side of the battlefield, men on the other side of the battlefield, you know, charging each other, you know, wielding weapons of war. You know, this war is primarily going to be fought with these nuclear missiles that are being created, you know. Now, you will have ground troops that are going to be going to war. But again, that's primarily how this war is going to be fought, with those nukes, man, you know. So I'm going to jump to Malachi chapter 4 and verse 1. And it says, "For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble, and the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that I shall leave them neither root nor branch." And right, man, that day that is coming that shall burn as an oven, man, World War III, aka the day of the Lord, man. You know, it's on the horizon. And as it says, man, you know, the Lord, is going to come back as a thief in the night, you know. So this is going to catch a lot of people off guard, man, because they're not watching, you know. And then I mentioned that, you know, that we're in a time of war, man, and indeed we are. So I'm just get straight to the point. You know, Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1 through 8, you know, explains how there's a literal time for everything, man, you know. But this is the time that we're in. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 8. And it says, "A time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace." And right, man, that's the time that we're in, man. We're in a time of hate, and we're definitely in the time of war, man. The Third World War, the war to end all wars, you know. That's the time that we're in. This is why you have these different nations that are exhausting their resources into, you know, stockpiling, you know, their nuclear arsenal, you know. Things are getting heated, you know, and with Donald Trump doing what he's doing, he is creating a lot of enemies, you know. So again, these nations are going to be mad. Pursuing to Revelation chapter 17, you know, "These shall hate the whore, you know, and burn her with fire," roughly paraphrasing, you know. These nations, you know, that are allies with America, they're going to turn on her and aid in the destruction of America, aka Babylon the Great, you know. So I'm going to come back to Isaiah chapter 54 and verse 16. And it says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy." And indeed, man, you know, these scientists and physicists that are behind developing and creating these nuclear missiles, they are the modern day smiths, man. But what does a blacksmith do? You know, they make weapons of war, you know. That was the job of a blacksmith, you know. And that's what these modern scientists are doing, man. They're creating weapons of war, weapons of mass destruction. And indeed, man, they are going to be used. You know, none of them are going to be spared. So real quick, I'm going to jump to Isaiah chapter 13. I'm going to start at verse 4. And it says, "The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle." So right, man, that noise of a multitude in the mountains is going to be those missiles, man, because you're going to hear them coming. You know, you're going to hear those rockets that are propelling these missiles, i.e., you know, the warhead in particular, you know, guiding these missiles to hit their specific target, you know. Verse 5, and it says, "They come from a far country, from the one, it's like it from the end of heaven, even to the other, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land." So right, man, these nations, it's like you're not nations, but these missiles are going to be shot from one end of the earth, you know, and land in another, you know. So if a missile is launched from Russia, it's going to hit America, you know, and then vice versa, you know, because America, you know, they're going to bomb back, but America is not going to win this war, you know. The end result of this place is going to be, you know, desolation, complete destruction. You know, Isaiah 34 gives you a vivid description of how America is going to look after this destruction takes place, you know. So again, this is America's going down. Esau, Edom is going down, man. you know. So this is the book of Joel, chapter 3 and verse 9. And it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong and right. I mentioned that earlier. How you have these different nations that are exhausting their resources into, stockpiling, their nuclear arsenal or investing it into their military in general, and this is what's happening, man. The Lord is getting these nations ready to be destroyed, because that's what's on the horizon, man. Complete destruction, World War III. Just going to get a couple more and that'll be it. So this is the book of Revelation, chapter 11 and verse 14. And it says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And right, the second woe being World War II. World War II happened, from roughly 1939 to about 1945, within that 6-year, time span, man, World War II happened, and there's no telling how long exactly World War III is going to take an hour, for this place to be destroyed. But again, man, the second war is past and that third war is coming quickly, man. World War III is coming. That's on the way, Don't be deceived. So this is the book of Revelation, chapter 7 and verse 1. And it says, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. So, right, these are 4 literal angels that are holding back the 4 winds. The 4 winds being the destruction, man. World War III. Because there's an appointed time when this war is going to happen. The prophecy of the mark of the beast being made mandatory, still has to come to pass. Jacob's trouble still has to come to pass. The elect being sealed, which this next verse is going to go into, has to come to pass before this destruction takes place, So this is Revelation 7 and verse 2, and it says, and I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living power, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our power in their foreheads, man. Meaning once the elect are sealed, they have that mark of exemption, because it's really all about predestination. The elect were selected from the beginning to receive salvation, but again, once the elect are sealed, man, it's over from there, man. It's just a wrap. So I'm going to end it with this. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 9 and verse 15. And it says, and the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And right, man, there's an appointed time, there's a particular hour, day, month, and year when this war is going to take place, And just like it says in the scriptures, it's only going to take the Lord 1 hour to destroy this place, man. He's going to make a speedy riddance of this place, and take Esau out of power, because that's what it says, for to slay the third part of men, because you have 3 classes of men on the earth. You have the sons of God, which are the biblical Israelites. You have the sons of men, which are the heathen nations, and you have the sons of the wicked, which are the nation of Edom, the so-called white man, who our Lord Yahushua is coming back to take out of power, along with you other nations that are, aiding and oppressing us, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till the next time I say Shalom.